mean to.
Totally fucking VM.
Ah, well.
Hello.
Everybody was having fun without me. I was waiting for my hair to dry.
You don't have a hairdryer?
Hey! Get back here, you saucy little mink.
So I got 50 loot boxes.
Oh shit! I was so fucked. I was so fucked.
I forgot how to do everything involving Overwatch. How the fuck do I join you guys?
Sorry.
Social, right click on somebody.
What? No, I invited somebody to a party. Whoops. My bad, Andor.
Sorry, on this VM, I should have joined when Grim's trying to kill me. Get the fucking kill.
No, Benny.
Alright, so I haven't played Overwatch in like... The LAN party was the last time I played Overwatch.
I can tell.
Okay, yes. Off to fantastic start.
Let us hope for a different outcome.
Oh my god, my mouse sensitivity feels off too. Fuck.
Away from me. Fuck you!
Nice try!
Who's a nice try for them?
I was like out in the open, I got 4 people shooting at me.
No, fuck. I thought do the same thing to you again. Video
Let us hope for a different outcome.
Yo, motherfuckers can't leave me alone. Just leave me alone now, could you?
You couldn't leave well enough alone is what you were trying to say.
I'm having a stroke in a second. It's just spit all over my face.
Fuck. So I do gotta say, these wireless headset is pretty fucking nice, by the way.
I'm secret!
It is so nice.
Your secret.
Squirrel?
So is it only this section of the map?
Yeah.
Everything else is...
Mother! Benny BMing me.
Fine.
Fuck. That was bullshit.
Welcome to Junkman.
I don't even know what the current standing of bullshit characters are not. So there's like, how many of us? 6?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, including Terry whenever he comes back. What are we doing? Because we can't like
kill him. Oh.
Okay, we're playing. We're playing with a maker. It's fine.
Oh shit!
I hit 3 health, Andar.
Well, I saw like an actual of you.
Oh, I'm sure you saw something alright.
And
Well, I should fucking see that small dick.
that small dick.
With the skull.
Andar, this small dick is filled with C4. Again, Jamal fucking... Every Doomfist just gets killed by bear traps.
You remember, I've only played Doomfist once.
These Africans can't avoid my bear traps.
Don't say that.
But
Way to go, Ender, you awakened the tryhard in him.
alright, dude, we're doing this then.
I'm just no good, that's why. You gotta admit, that was a pretty fucking good shot. That was so
You're
good.
to me.
God damn it, really?
Oh my god, please, why do you do
Like,
Dick hole. Fuck this game.
dig in?
Now I realize why.
Oh. No, Grim. No.
With every death comes honor. With honor, redemption.
Nice try.
Fuck.
I killed both of you guys.
no, you fucking asshole.
How come kills aren't being recorded?
Because we're not in a full game.
We're not in an actual game.
Let's just change that. I'm ripping your video.
How exactly do you change
okay.
that?
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I can change it so I can fucking speak. I should be able to make it so I can continue.
So yeah, so it's an actual game.
on,
Lobby, announcing, voice match, max, quick roll, let's try it to 6, since there's only 6 of us. That's
Isn't there 7 if what's his name comes back?
but right now he's not here, so if I put it at 6, then we can all play.
Alright.
Okay.
Game.
Calm down, Jamal.
I like how this actually says meme game.
What map do you guys want?
Something
Anything
spooky.
Halloween.
Spooky.
Yeah.
This isn't
Spooky.
Spookfest, just so you know.
But it's the event.
It is the event, but it's not Spookfest event yet.
Is there a scary Eichenwald?
Yeah, I can weld. Sounds good.
Yeah. Oh shit, my battery's.
Traveling to Eichenwald.
Ooh, I have not seen
Love
this.
hearing you, babe.
Sorry,
Select your hero.
I'm a bum.
Hey,
Thank you,
we're in the
Andar.
Halloween event in Overwatch. Technically, it's the first day of Spookfest.
No, this isn't official. It's non-canon.
Non-canon. It's kind of like how Friday the 13th isn't going to be an official day of Spookfest.
No, that
Because
is an official
Jamal
day of
doesn't
Spookfest.
plan around shit.
No, I actually
With
did plan
every
around
death
us playing Friday the
comes
13th
honor.
on Friday the 13th, which
honor,
every fucking streamer on Earth is gonna do, by the way. So we're not really that
Okay.
original.
Aren't you gonna get popular or something?
No. Fucking, I hate you so much.
I don't know what I did.
Otherwise,
Start over at the
Though.
beginning.
Bye, Benny.
I haven't played this game in so long, I forget what characters I'm good at. The correct answer is
Spoiler,
none.
no.
The wolf marks his prey.
Okay, so I can't go in that area, else I'll die.
Hardly a
I
chance.
have no health, I'm healing.
See you later.
What a being a bitch.
Oh, I almost said get that
Dump,
down.
dump on Jamal.
Ah, I got you!
Oh, hello.
Ah!
By the way, you can't go in there, Jamal, or you die.
Oh, fuck!
That's it, I'm tryharding.
One kill.
You weren't before?
No, now I'm really tryharding.
Oh, God. Yeah, you are.
Ends up being a fucking mover. Mover.
Dang it.
I
don't even know how to
tryharding
use
so bad, I'm
moves.
missing every shot too.
Alright, so yeah, my main isn't working.
Rendez-vous avec la mort.
Yeah, that's
All about that.
Enemy 15 kills to win.
15 kills.
He's winning.
Noob, shouldn't you be winning?
Because I'm using cheap Edra.
Hey, Smithers in that too.
Fucking Grim, you should not be alive right now.
In deathmatch.
Yeah.
No. Where were we?
Bye, Andar. Never mind. I'm sorry. Andar, I'm sorry. Please.
Oh no, I've been poisoned.
So was Andar.
Oh, so if you
Ah,
throw a cloud, it
wait!
does damage over time even if you get out of the cloud?
Yeah,
Yep.
it's
Oh,
poisonous.
yeah, you're poisoned.
Okay.
Hi, Edford.
Damn it.
Rendez-vous avec la mort.
Everyone wants me dead for some reason.
I haven't laughed.
Bye, Andar.
My mouse is weird as fuck.
Bastard.
I have two fucking snipers shooting me!
Oh fuck, I was wondering where you were. Please.
Oh, here's...
Don't worry, it's good that we're both missing.
Oh god!
No one can hide from their sight.
I pinned!
Fuck, I should have ducked the key out.
Still in that.
Gonna take you back to my ass.
Back to my ass.
To play the shitty games that might be paid.
Where's the
We're so bad, oh my
Widow
God.
Maiden? God damn it. Okay, there we go.
My mouse got fucked. Damn it.
This is hella cool. I'm stuck.
Oh, okay, that's the wrong button. I remember how to play video games. Specifically this one. Yeah, AMA. I saw Electricic live AMA. I am gay, yes. You reapers are gay. Well, shit.
Gotta get rid of fruit!
You almost watched World there, Grimwood. What's wrong?
Fuck off.
But you were so afraid of him.
Oh my god. Fucking, are you fucking serious? Like, really? What the fuck was
I got
that?
sniped.
How did
Oh, okay, I thought you just fucking slung in and fucking...
I was jumping on your head, actually.
Oh, hey there.
Bye, Grim.
No! Why is it all the characters I play as are bad?
Hey, noob.
I really forgot how to play this video game.
Bye, noob.
I will protect the innocent.
Benny, don't do this. You don't want to fight me.
Don't mess.
I'm just going for the Junkrat.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan.
Enemy needs 3.
I really dislike food right now.
Oh, come on. Yes!
No, that was counted as his. Not letting you have that.
Let's go for a guaranteed.
Some guarantee.
Oh, look at this.
I guarantee.
Shield generator, you say?
What?
There's just so much fucking going on right now.
Much better.
About that. Thank you.
Enemy needs 2.
You don't think him? He gets points.
Enemy needs 1 kill.
For twinning.
Fruit one. I have
Can I make
Fucking, I just saved you. And then killed you anyways.
Make it 4 kills. Yay!
On a roll.
And sorry guys, Fruit's gonna kill me.
How about killing you
Jump off
first?
an edge. Something. Prevent it. Stop it.
Bye.
I've got you in my sights.
3 finish.
Alright, I need to fix my fucking...
Play of
Oh no,
Oh, what a surprise.
Rip tire,
Play
what a
the game.
surprise.
Oh, no, this wasn't Rip Tire.
This was just bullshit. Oh, this is whenever I missed every single shot on you. Nice.
I was dead.
I got a gold medal.
Controls.
Yeah.
What?
I got
Oh, I
this.
guess most assists. I got
Almost
so
healing
many
done.
assists.
Or most healing done. Because you were playing 76.
God damn it, I hate how this game fucking does the exact same thing that Counter-Strike does. If you're in a lobby, you can't leave to go open up cases. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Actually, you can. That's the one thing you can do in the lobby.
Oh, right.
Rip the scariest map of all.
Hey, dude, this
Traveling.
scares me.
Well, Sky's not even bad, fuck you.
That means being in the Heroes of the Storm, it's so popular.
Select your hero.
So, Andrew, how'd you
I'm
enjoy
gonna try
playing
the
Tomb
D-Bag. Here,
Raider?
this
It's fun.
That's good.
What happened to that safe work degeneracy there? Because I was looking at that channel.
3,
I moved it down to the autism category.
1.
There we go. Just had to post that.
Cheers, love! The cavalry's here!
It is so weird.
I know, Homer Simpson.
The whole map.
Full stop! Now, where were we?
What's so weird? Rocket launcher!
Oh god, I haven't played this game in so long, I don't even know what fucking curse key there is.
She has missiles now.
Oh, that's in?
Yep.
Get that feed,
That was in a while ago.
Oh, I still love. Thank you.
Who's gonna take you back to my ass?
Back in the fight.
I don't want to play
And-
this game right now, thank you.
Andar, fuck you.
All the filthy Dream Lord man
Let's try that again.
from the past. Suck ass, pass.
Ass, 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 ass. It's time to step on my ass. Tonight.
I figured people can get ass played on me.
Oh. Oh my god.
Hi.
So much going on.
Worth it, I guess.
Oh,
Me, I'm screwed, dude.
I can do things for you, please.
That's not right now.
Okay.
Come on, I'm not sure you're playing Junkrat properly. You're not getting the air.
You're right.
Oh, that's.
But it's
Fucking
nuts.
fuck off, Grim.
No.
How you doing? By the way, dude.
Fucking. Seriously.
That's what you get.
Bitch ass.
You won't get rid of me, that.
How many fucking turrets are there?
Well, news counts as one, I guess.
It seems on all the platforms.
Get back here, IKEA!
IKEA?
I like how Fruit was about to bitch at me for being on these moving turret smashes, and then he realized he was multi-pouring his fucking don't hear anything. So he's like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't take it.
God damn it.
15 kills.
I haven't played Overwatch in like fucking several months. I really fucking forgot how to play this game.
This is my domain, no one enter it, or else they will die.
Walks among you.
So Noob's gonna die? I heard Noob's gonna die.
I'll switch my head. Hi, Benny.
Hi.
No! I was trying to solve the Noob problem.
Hi.
Knock my fucking turret down.
I have gas.
The fuck? Oh, that's right. Hey, you guys know what I'm actually down for playing tonight?
Nothing.
I'll play Friday if you guys want to.
So, on the
I mean, I'm gonna
Sunday-
complain a lot about it until it gets updated, but I will play it.
So when it gets updated in like 2 days.
No! Fuck!
That was scary, because I actually almost died. Fine, keep playing the game.
Shut
I do all that
down.
work, and someone else fucking steals my kill.
Okay, never mind.
Oh, dang it!
I'm good to go.
Oh shit!
I didn't know if you knew I was there.
Who the fuck is the... Who is... Jamal, are you the fucking Reaper who was following me?
I guess so, because I'm the one that's playing Reaper right now.
I'm being fucked by both sides. Fuck you!
Wow, and you saved me.
Get him! Fucking suck!
See ya.
How am I tied for first?
No,
I guess Hanzo was really that fucking easy mode.
Why is nobody healing me? I wouldn't
This time, I'll finish the job.
Well, that's been dealt with. Well, I guess the battle's over here now. But I guess Benny's just set up all the way across the map.
I'm winning back.
Holy fuck.
Melee fight, melee fight.
They just buffed Junkrat, right?
What?
They just buffed Junkrat, right?
They just get a second landmine, that's it. He has the same damage.
It's unreal now, because he outputs a lot more blast damage. It's
He always did.
No! I tried to bounce it off the wall, but I fucking aimed too far over and it came back at me.
We're doing this now, dude.
Much better.
Okay, that works too, I guess.
No, dude, we're gonna see if they fucking let us if we can beat my Junkrat.
I like you much.
No, wait, what?
Let's ask, will it
Oh!
Let's
Anyone?
go.
Watch the kill cam on that.
I'm so mad.
Oh, I didn't even get credit for that. And are you fucking little old lady ass bitch?
Fuck! Shit,
Bitch
I
ass.
my scatter arrow in.
You fucking took my ultimate kill on Grim.
I'm on fire.
Oh,
Hey.
Yes.
What?
But yeah.
You're very quiet.
How's this?
He's your neighbor can't hear.
Oh, hi.
Oh, what?
Watch this!
Oh my god, Hanzo is so fucking cheap!
Oh god damn it! Noob.
Makes you stronger.
Please
Don't
don't kill
worry,
me.
that instant karma
I was in a
for
fucking,
that.
I was in a fucking kill new type when he came around the corner.
I give 0 shits. Kill you again.
Jesus Christ.
Fucking
He's
bullshit.
Widowmaker.
Yeah, I like Grim's idea.
Justice ain't gonna dispense itself.
Oh!
Bye, noob.
Oh shit! No! I let go of it. Oh.
No, I can't aim for shit.
It's okay, neither can I.
Because this is actually working pretty well.
Congrats on not killing yourself this time, noob.
This life's never uneventful.
Oh shit, noob!
Oh!
Oh, thanks.
No, just kidding, you're gonna die.
Oh shit, I just fucking whiffed the shot on whoever's playing the tree. I guess
That's why they call him Man Jamal the Free. It's that one. Try another.
Oh my god. I do not like that you're just maining Junkrat.
So you're saying the character I've been meaning since launch?
You haven't.
That's Robot.
when I wasn't forced to play tank, I'd try to play Junkrat.
Where'd you go?
See, the thing is, I'm not good at any DPS character because Xander and I are not allowed to play DPS at all.
I got you!
Somebody
I got him.
Leaving.
No, I got him.
I think you're not good because you haven't played Overwatch.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
To be fair, we have stopped Jamal from playing Overwatch.
Look at that.
Oh, I like it better whenever playing on a fucking team.
Don't like
So then you don't have to deal with the bullshit?
Yeah, because fuck you.
Wow.
Ah, you're gonna die.
So with someone else?
Fuck! No! Of course, Fruit takes a fucking lead for that one.
Don't let him get away with this. Don't let him get away with this.
He can't keep getting away with
He
it.
can't keep getting away with that.
60 seconds.
Child, okay,
Damn it! You son of a bitch! I fucking ripped full shots out of your head!
Why?
Enemy needs 3 kills.
You're actually a cunt, you know that?
Just play the game,
Your
man.
fucking parents don't love you.
Oh my god.
Oh, yeah!
I want to see what this is like.
Fight going in there.
I got him.
What are you, bitch ass? Watch that kill cam.
It's time.
Oh.
With every death comes honor.
Damn it.
With honor, redemption.
No!
Yes.
No!
Oh.
Play of the game.
I can't damn again.
Oh yeah, it's this fucking... This is kind of the grim. And then this is the Ember kill.
Oh, you're barely outside that dragon. Alright, I guess we're in.
I fucking just barely moved it.
Fuck, that was fun.
You only beat me because you had half my deaths and 1 more assist.
Who's left?
Oh, Benny.
Benny.
Oh, I thought.
One more.
We're not switching
Just
to
so I don't win.
Oh, are we? Yeah.
One more.
Okay.
Let's do one more. Let's do one more. Let's do it on a good map too. The best map, the only map that's good nowadays, the best map ever.
Everyone go Reinhardt.
How about we don't?
Everyone go Sombra.
That's even worse.
Traveling.
Everyone go Junkrat?
Hanzo?
Even, oh god.
Prepare for battle.
Everyone go racist stereotype this map.
Racist stereotypes, alright.
Small, not on stream, please.
Well, too late. I've already done it.
Are you streaming, Joel?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I asked that. That says
My title is I just saw Electric Six live AMA.
Only through conflict do we
Has
evolve.
anyone asked you anything?
Build came in here and asked me if I was gay, and I said yes, and he says alright, and left.
Fuck!
Oh, we have to do
I'll be face to death, you cocksucker.
Wait,
that was
what?
Lucio, that was very stereotype.
Wait, Anna, please. I'm sorry. Watch this character alive.
Bullshit!
Meanwhile, you fucking yell at me. Hey, Joel, you fix something.
I take it on.
Well, he said racist stereotypes.
We're like,
I think you step on a bear trap.
I was looking for a challenge.
I will.
Rising
Real life. My face is like really red right now.
And I can't believe I spent money. I spent fucking money.
Oh, what? I do not like doing this hitbox. It's too wide.
Where the fuck did you go? I lost you.
Fuck. Fuck.
The battle goes on.
Hanya, not good point, man.
Bye, Graham.
It's the
Oh,
full
what?
map.
See, I do not like that. You get 2 mines and you're abusing the hell out of it.
So you're saying I'm using my 2 mines?
Everyone, fucking kill fruit. Just focus them.
Yes, focus me, so I don't get really close to them.
I went bit. Oh.
Uh-oh, and our meter is fighting for lead again.
Get ready
I take it on.
Do you guys recognize that sound?
15 kills.
Get ready.
Fuck, I'm trying to shoot it. I'm trying to shoot it.
What? How you? Oh my god, are you kidding me? Thank you.
Take that.
What? Bullshit.
Someone stepped in a bear trap.
There we go.
I've been knocked down before.
I've been knocked up.
Meteor strike.
I'm looking up trying to shoot you out of the air, but apparently you just become, you know, important.
One with the skybox. I was like, there's no way I'm gonna be able to use this for anything good, so I might as well just fucking use it to fucking take out Andar. What did you not learn your lesson?
What?
Feed me kills.
Oh no, Andar, run!
Here we go. Get the guy, get the guy. Fuck, I'll kill you. No!
Oh, what? Oh, I guess during your thing it doesn't.
Alright, when in doubt, please straight up hit scan.
My kill.
And I'll cry if I want to. Cry if I want to. What happened to you?
I was gonna say, if I got any kills there, I would have finished them all spot for with the bombs.
Yeah.
No rest for the weary.
Just let him run away. No, please. I beg you. Thank you.
Oh, wait!
Running?
It's running, Brute.
You gotta walk out.
Oh no. Oh no.
Dragons!
Ready for a shot.
Out. Need you.
Fucking bullshit. You jumped over my
Enemies
goddamn
10
helix
kills to
rockets.
win.
I'm not a young.
You know the Here's the Storm Overwatch junk rats thing can jump over walls too.
Okay, that's bullshit.
Which did you just die? It's really fucking hitbox got they made Bates left at that wall and then fucking caught back. Like seriously.
Can you just surrender?
No.
Just give yourself up to Junkrat.
Oh my god, it's up there.
No. Never.
Where's, oh, there he is. Where the fuck you were?
Where is Reaver?
That took off half my health.
I got.
God. Did you just ground scatter me?
Yes.
You
Like I'm behind.
absolute dick.
Meteor strike.
Oh no. Dude, why is it that every character you main, I absolutely fucking hate you for?
I mean, I don't main Doomfist. I bought him. I buy a gold from ironically.
I can't fucking hit you. Your hitbox is a mile long, and I can't hit you.
Dude, what happened there was pretty ironic, actually.
What's up? Thank you.
Bye, Jamal.
Yeah, bye Jamal.
Ready for a shock.
Where is Andar?
I hear arrows. Where is he?
Well, that didn't kill me.
Rising uppercut.
I have 3 health, by the way. Who's ever?
Shit, I'm the one person Roadhog can still insta-kill.
Is it man?
And the crew sometimes, but it's inconsistent.
Ah! Oh! That was close.
Oh fuck!
You made me miss my ult!
Jamal, that character's bullshit. I'm kidding. Chill.
It's that buffable like that.
No one was in there? Oh, I guess.
Oh my god, it's fucking Dragon Ball ZS fight. Oh my god, there we go.
Why is your cooldown so small?
Oh,
enemy needs 5 kills to win.
My lumps! They exposed me!
Oh fuck!
Bye, buddy.
Enemy needs 4 kills to win.
Oh!
3 kills.
I was really hoping that would have worked.
I got cheeky there.
Goddamn fucking this pissed me off.
yeah. He used to be like worse too.
Oh yeah, he used to be so much worse. Imagine Doomfist, but like.
Yeah.
Come on, fight me, Power Ranger.
You're gonna fucking
Fuck you,
arrow.
I'm a green Power Ranger.
Ah!
Where is this?
Ah! Ah! Ah!
Okay, but dude, how do you always manage to kill yourself in every situation?
That was completely your fault, actually.
Yeah, it's my fault that you died on your own.
I am to punch you and you jumped over me.
He's about to
My
suck for me.
aim is so bad.
Oh shit!
What?
Wait, how did you kill me after the fact?
I guess you let the arrow go, I hit you and
Alright, the healing. Right, I forgot.
Oh, because you blasted me, I let go of the arrow, and then you died, and then I hit the wall.
yeah, I guess.
There's a Junkrat right there, kill him!
I did. There's no matter then.
Killed each other with destruction.
Oh shit! Fruit, what's that? What's that?
Oh my god, Andy. Oh shit, that was amazing. That was fucking... Shit. Oh, we got suppressive fire.
Yeah,
Suppressive fire!
like you always do.
Oh god!
Bye.
That's scary when I fucking do that hint down.
Well, I didn't fucking realize you fucking decided. That's what the scary thing is.
Hello.
Oh, fuck! I was notched.
Goodbye.
I can't keep up.
No!
Okay, we need to play that one. I want fucking win. I want a game where fucking Fruit doesn't win.
Play of the game.
Shit.
Oh, you need to go with skill than me. No. Oh, this.
Does he kill her?
Doomfist is horse shit.
Again, he has actually, like, they nerfed the hitbox of his fist.
God damn, he used to like, be able to look at someone's direction, charge at them, and they would explode.
He used to have old, think of it like this, he used to have old, actually no, he had Huntsman.
Do one on that one map that we like a lot.
The King Zero?
Do one on that one map we like a lot. I forgot the names of all the maps in this game, actually. It's been a couple months.
Actually, wait, is fucking the new map? Is that on this?
The new
What,
map.
Chateau Goliath?
No, fucking
Chateau? Chateau?
Junkrat area.
Oh, Junkertown. Probably.
That's not actually. We're doing fucking nipple.
Nipple?
Nipples.
Junkertown!
Yeah.
Ow.
Junkrat gonna get his own
Grim, I want to point out you actually sounded like ACDC there.
Like
Like
the entire band. Not just
No, like the
singer.
man. Like the man himself, ACDC.
Select
Yes.
I sound like us.
I picked the wrong map for this course, I guess.
The nipple shrine?
Yeah.
Happen. You all saw it coming.
Bert told me to pick the map in Iraq, and I didn't know what he was talking about, so I just picked this one.
I told you to pick the Iraq map.
1. Fight.
The one that's in the Middle East that no one knows.
Wow, that is overpowered.
I know, right?
Okay, what now, big boy?
Bro.
I don't know, Jamal, what now?
How dare you?
Fuck! Oh, thank. How?
Bye, Jamal.
Oh,
Bye.
I was so confused on how the fuck I actually hit you.
Benny, how could you?
Because I was last place last game. That's
Wow,
why.
that is just dangerous.
Oh, fuck. Wait, what?
You ran into his trap!
I wonder what the fuck, guy.
Have the right to
I was like,
remain.
how killed that I saw?
I tried to shrug off your rockets, but you kind of didn't leave me alone, so.
I just saw the phrase triggered appear.
Oh, what?
Fuck! So close to killing you two for boner ass. Somebody's about to get fucking Jarvis tonight.
Holy shit. Is that a threat?
Yes.
It's not a threat, it's a promise.
I mean, Jared, you mean like you're gonna fucking try and molest me and want you to like chance off?
You can shoot while you're fucking doing the thing now. Wow, they fucking reworked D.Va a lot.
D.Va?
Yeah, she's sort of the way you were saying she was.
All systems checked out.
Oh, it's better.
What?
There's so much happening right now, oh my god! Oh!
Ejecting.
Fuck, I wasn't punching him out.
Fuck.
Enemy needs.
You just like
15
slutty
kills
look
to
at
win.
me and then just fucking bomb me.
Go after fruit!
It's a
Yeah, I'm
trick.
okay.
I will.
Trees everyone. I'm not gonna kill anyone before.
Go after fruit, he says. She says.
You were in my way of fruit.
I wasn't though. I was
Everybody still landed the
Benny,
bomb
what was that
on
about a
me.
truce right now?
I thought you were Junkrat.
Back into the grave.
flying around.
I thought.
I am a woman.
I just saw Junkrat and I went for it.
Watch out!
That was completely overkill, but okay.
The completely overkill panic. Did you get a bad skin?
Oh, I just a thing with bad skins.
No, I just have a safe sitting in my house for no reason.
Oh, fuck.
Hi. Hi.
I'm not going to.
I'm sorry, you just looked at me and I got scared. Oh my god.
Wait,
Only
I did 100 to you. Why did I get the fuck?
That was scary.
Oh shit!
The only reason I killed Jamal was because he was
Oh,
Junkrat.
sliver, no.
I couldn't see the name. I just shot.
I just beat the shit out. It's like,
Bye, Benny.
Wow.
Clearing the area.
I hate this so much.
This character is literally made for me.
What the fuck? A Junkrat walked around the corner and it turned into Doomfist. What the hell?
A dirty boy that's cheap.
Where the fuck did the Junkrat go?
Alas.
I had no idea what Junkrat you're talking about.
I swear to God, I'm turning. Everybody's
saw
just
you.
seeing Junkrats now.
Everywhere.
Please, you're my counter. Please go away, Jamal.
I'm not going to kill anybody but Junkrat.
Alright, that's it. We gotta do something about this fucking Junkrat problem.
I'm not killing people. Why are people killing?
Why aren't you dying? Oh my god. Should be
Enemy
dead.
needs 10 kills to win.
Can't get
Okay.
it better.
Get him!
This
We have to get him, Jamal! Jamal!
Alright, fine.
Meteor strike.
Like, I don't hear you.
I'm
Sorry.
not going to.
You were when you play Doomfist, you go punching from one person to the next. It's how it works. You see something, you punch in the mouth.
You can't trust noob. Does Junkrat
No,
even
he's
kill
killed
anymore?
me. He's killed me like 3 times since the truce was announced.
I'm gonna get so fucking mad. I'm gonna throw these wireless headset. Fucking.
I'm gonna have so much shit to clip. Oh my god.
Kill him!
You were fucking aiming at me, you dickhead!
I'm Doomfist and you were in the air. I just swung past you. Doesn't really fucking get me.
Bitch!
Officer.
Fuck!
Oh, Noob's going to lead, isn't he? Isn't that
Fucking
weird?
asshole!
It's almost like
Sorry. I'm sorry! I need the points! I need the point!
Alright, now we go after Noob because fuck him.
Yeah.
Because he took the lead that he didn't think anybody else was gonna notice.
I was hoping you would. I was hoping you'd continue fighting.
I have
Beans
been
actually died.
Are you?
That's fine.
Oh my god, I'm so fucking salty. I'm fucking definitely Jarvis.
What if I get raining JJ first? I'm actually playing Friday the 13th edition right now.
I was waiting for him to go by.
Bitch.
Yeah, this is
Much
very
better.
salty.
At Fire,
The salt is a way of life. I haven't seen him fucking forever.
5 kills to win.
Be right back. I'm out of here.
Meet your strike.
Enemy leads 4 kills to win.
Fuck this, I'm out.
Fuck this shit, I'm out.
No.
Been here all along.
Nope.
Ay, pobrecito.
Fuck.
Go get give me your face. Oh, come do it then.
Did you guys see that jump rat?
Looking for me.
Looking for me.
Oh, you motherfucker. Out of everything.
That's all I need.
You gotta kill him. He's 3 points away. He can't keep getting away with this.
Yeah, I want to play other games. I want
You just fucking, I'm peppering you the entire time with a goddamn submachine gun. You just slightly turn around.
Enemy needs 2
Why?
kills.
Why me? How do you know I was even here?
See you
You're
later.
so dead, Benny.
¿Qué onda?
Currently.
I found him. He's in the middle. Get him.
Fuck. This I'm not last anymore.
I hear the
I
noise.
needed to switch to something else.
Bullshit.
Get him. He's over there.
Where are you playing, Topher doesn't
I
win?
need this
He's up
later.
there.
Translocating.
Fuck him up.
Benny, I'm sorry.
¿Extrañaste? Initiating the hack. Much better.
No regrets.
No, fine, Benny, you know it.
Get him.
Fine,
Get him, Jamal. Fuck him up.
It's okay.
Ah!
Friends,
Who is that?
friends taught me not to trust.
Bye, Jamal.
Yes!
I am the winner.
Beacon.
You're really not, though.
Much better. ¿Qué tal?
I almost punched you in the face, you know? Oh, well, I'm just sitting right now.
Don't let him get you, Betty.
When you sound a fucking doom fist.
Fucking, who are we going after now?
I don't know.
Well, Steven's
Don't
first 1 kill away, so and now he's
Fucking nobody, apparently. God
we're doing that
damn
game.
it!
Fuck this. You know what?
I'm so sick of seeing Pimsy Winkle wins.
The game.
Alright, everyone play Junkrat. Fuck him up.
Jamal, can you add that as a quote? Can you add that as a quote?
Fuck him up. Become Junkrat. Fuck him up.
No, we're doing more than one. We're doing more than that. 1 second. We're fucking picking.
Are you nerfing? Go into the options and nerf.
No.
Junkrat.
I'm not doing that because that'd be too shitty.
No.
1 second.
You guys can join me whenever you're ready. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to rush you, but
We're doing one more. I'm sorry.
We're
No,
not
no, like,
fucking
I'm
finishing
seriously
Overwatch
not
until we
rushing at all.
kick Furt's
I'm just
ass.
in here listening to a podcast, so
Okay.
take your time.
We'll do.
It's okay, Vinny. You can audibly be salty.
We all are. I only get fucking salty when I play this game against you guys.
Traveling
Do it.
to
There's
E.
no
Benny's
shame.
big Widowmaker.
Can't be secretive about it. Betty,
Select your hero.
cuss us out.
Dude, you must think I'm stupid.
That's stupid. Just observant.
You think I don't know what you pulled? 'Cause
Everybody, pick your best character and this just try to win.
1. Fight.
I've got a strategy with this one.
One-man apocalypse.
what's that?
I just got a strategy.
Fucking mouse. Rich changes up. He's playing Widowmaker. Fucking knew it.
They call me Ian. I'm an asshole. Ruining people's lives.
God damn it, there's so many fucking Junkrats.
Fuck the Junker Town. Now you guys come.
Bye, Jamal.
Bye.
Oh, bad.
That dick.
Enemy needs 15 kills to win.
Ooh, pretty interesting.
Hi. Hi.
So, no, did you actually change any of the settings in this lobby?
No, I didn't.
So I can't actually play jump right without
we were
like one hit.
I literally just wanted to play Snap so that it would be really bad against that guy. I mean, it's not bad, but I mean.
Also because this is your best map for using Widowmaker.
It is true. It's also nice. Second.
Switch up.
What happened to my wheel?
Place. Okay, watch before you're done. Please.
And our noob can focus down the wheel and instantly kill it.
I shot it. Okay, what about that thing?
Damn it! I really was hoping that was gonna work. I was really hoping your fucking shit was gonna be a cooldown.
Find a new way to fight, dude. This sucks.
Sure, I'm not leading.
Oh fuck, that would have been so great.
Come here, big boy, you got a pretty mouth!
Oh no! I don't have a pretty mouth, you've got a pretty mouth.
No! No!
That would have been great if that worked.
Can't ball over anymore, they changed it.
Keep buffed. Buffed Widow.
And please, die! Oh, me help! I need me help. Please fucking help, please. They remove the health kits?
I wish Roadhog was still overpowered.
Hey, and I think what you're doing
so much more fun right now.
No, they had to nerf Roadhog. He was too overpowered. The forum said so.
I mean, fuck, if you go through my stream archive, I'd say so too.
Gain. Oh! So, I was killing Endar, but okay.
10 kills remaining.
Why would we focus on killing Endar?
Because he was set up and he's scaring me.
Fuck you! You're a piece of shit! I was shooting 3 of you! 3 of you were stuck in that fucking ult.
That's the power of attraction.
Shit, now Noob's gonna fucking do shit.
You know Jamal's winning.
Surprising.
Noob. Don't pull that shit where you're like,
Okay, so, oh my god, that was just brutal as shit.
it's time to work my way back up and get combos now. Feels good when I'm the implants in you. Here to show the world that my skills only skin deep.
God damn it.
Wait, you can run out? Fuck!
You run out, yeah. Oh, no, you might have been. I mean, you used to not doing that. Oh, Jesus Christ. The fucking teacher coming at you.
Meteor strike.
I'm probably gonna die here, aren't I? Fuck, please.
That was brutal.
I couldn't do anything. I saw him. Like,
Meteor strike.
isn't that good?
Justice will be done.
Sorry, I hear that. I heard you fucking set up, and I was worried about the fucking set up.
Nice shield, Grim.
Thanks. You guys are pretty cool too.
Thanks.
I also have a shield. But only sometimes.
Okay, fuck Reinhardt on this map.
Yeah.
Fact,
But also fuck Reinhardt, am I right?
Like,
Let's move it, people. Check this out.
I was sort of hoping you would have turned around at some point.
Why can't I climb this?
Here, double king.
Nobody's killed my shield generator.
Shield generator?
I mean, no.
Fuck.
I'm taking that. Goodbye.
Well, I'm dead. Goodbye.
I am the 10. No, go away, fuck.
I really should not have lived as much as I did there.
I don't know why I decided to fucking have a peeking fight with a fucking no.
Perfect day for some midnight night.
Damn it.
Oh, just
So close.
Fuck you! No!
Fuck.
Well, that was interesting. Wait, someone say Nintendo Switch?
And then Grundo
Yes.
switch.
Nintendo Switch.
Fucking end up.
Got me.
What? Oh, my shield.
Okay, can we have a game where Junkrat doesn't fucking win? Can that be
Fuck
a
you.
First thing what we're doing.
Killing you? Yes. What would Paul Bearer say?
Destroy and
I'm your dad.
No! Oh shit, I caught up? Wow.
Damn it, I ran out of ammo or the fucking shot.
Damn it.
Sorry, just fucking corner camping. Oh shit.
load up again.
I've learned, motherfucker!
Jesus Christ.
Lead lost.
Please tell me you died, Jamal.
No!
Oh no. Fuck! Damn it!
Oh, thank God. I'm glad the fucking...
Finally.
Thank God. Okay.
Fuck this game. I was so close!
I saw this. And then I couldn't kill him! Like, what?
You can't kill a Bastion.
Jesus Christ. Welcome to Bastion.
That's literally a fucking, like, launch title fucking noob play of the game right
Okay,
there.
let's go play some,
Fuck, I'm so angry. You guys are all fucking dead meat and Friday. Just FYI. Fuck, I'm opening up
before.
fucking
Smash,
thing.
smash, 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 smash.
No, you're hitting me. Kill him.
The like button.
Oh hey, I just got the Zarya skin. Apparently, Overwatch is happy.
You ready to go?
Like a man here. And be careful because, Jesus Christ, because
Oh my God.
Paul's really angry.
I'm fucking angry.
Yeah, I basically dominated for about...
Oh,
Oh.
really?
Basically won like 2 games in a row and then Andor won the last
Join
one.
us.
I'm loading still, jeez.
When I could be working on homework right now, but I'm playing with you guys because I love you guys.
Can you text Rick? I don't know if he crashed or not.
He might have
He just got really angry at all the jump.
Yay!
Okay,
I've
like,
got
give
the
me
new
5
pack
seconds,
tomorrow.
Mom.
Alright, that's enough loot boxes for right now. I'll be opening more. Eventually.
Jamal has gas.
Gas, gas, gas. Actually, whenever I came home from the show, I farted a lot.
Did not. It's fine.
Oh, Benny. Sweet fucking holiday name.
He doesn't.
Hey, mine's pretty good.
The one-time noob actually has a good one.
Benny.
Spooky.
Oh, man. You guys mind if I go first? I didn't get to last time.
Oh no.
Alright, Jamal's unbridled rage can wait.
Oh, don't worry, I'll be.
Oh no, I mean if he's pissed off, he can go first. Of course, it'll probably piss him off more because he'll fail to kill everybody.
Oh.
Alright, I'm gonna RP.
I'll accept that challenge.
Also, I'm gonna use emotes. Guys,
Wait,
make sure you use your emote.
I'm gonna go pee and get a drink.
Yeah, I should go take a piss.
The game
We're
is
back.
loading.
You have time to. Sorry, you have time to go. We're fast.
Your guys, I don't like it when they make sexy characters and things that aren't sexy.
Like the characters ugly and make them ugly.
No, like Tumblr sexifies weird stuff like Cat in the Hat.
I love it whenever they do that, actually.
Hate it.
It's my all-time favorite.
I'm back with a healthy snack.
A healthy snack, Rebecca.
I got some carrots and an apple. I like carrots. They're really good.
Are they?
They also help you see better, supposedly.
Wait, you have to buy the fucking DLC? Are you serious?
What the swimsuits?
That's what I fucking think of this game. I've spent way too much money today.
What DLC are you buying?
I want to be banana hammock man.
You're gonna be Chad?
Yes.
You know, Jamal, if you actually play Lachapa, he actually is an outfit that looks like what something you would wear.
Yeah, that's what I'm going for.
Man, that Pittsburgh toilet really comes in handy sometimes.
Okay, I'm back.
Alright. Who's going first?
I'll take the opportunity.
Not it, because you guys don't like me, because I'm uncinematic.
Well,
Oh, you just scared me.
you just
You're
have
too
a...
good.
You're too good.
Where is he? He's not even in here.
But who is Rurik?
Where is Rick?
Jamal's joining.
He crashed. I'm assuming he crashed.
Alrighty.
Already? I think we all know what happened to Rick.
He died again.
Man, Kenny has like the most basic bitch clothes ever. My god.
I mean, he is the basic bitch guy.
Are we waiting on him, or are we gonna play one?
I want to take a minute to look at all the appearances.
Okay.
Wonderful leopard print Chag.
Fun fact, if you have Grease Monkey, put it on Jenny and Chad, because that stat actually does better with it.
Well, how does it work if they're already max?
It makes them starting the car faster.
My dad's a cop.
But Grandma, there's a question.
Why?
What's up with the weapon durability?
That's also for luck.
No, why has it been so fucked recently?
Nice.
Oh, they did a glitch, so when it comes to the luck stat for weapon durability, it's reversed. So technically, AJ has the best luck, whereas Chad now has the worst.
So, don't play Chad?
If you want your baseball bat to get destroyed in 3 hits, don't play Chad.
It's more like 1 hit nowadays, actually.
All in 1 hit.
You were there for it, Grimhood. You saw it happen. Also, it's funny, dude. We've seen all the movies now with all these maps here.
Gas.
We should go to the barn.
Gas, gas, gas. It's time to step on my ass.
Jamal, there's actually a character you would have liked in the movies.
Is it the stoner dude?
No.
Gas, gas, gas.
Are you guys excited
lovely.
for
That's
stoner
a
dude?
fucking great ass texture.
Is he gonna be your main now?
Who?
Stoner dude.
Probably not, actually.
Only if you go downstairs and get killed instantly.
Don't spoil the movies, goddamn.
Have any of you here even smoked weed?
I
no.
have, yes.
Small.
Are you saying this is an outfit that I would wear for La Chapa?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put in the wood with that. Yeah.
I mean, then again, back in the day, I used to be a connoisseur of Hawaiian shirts.
Gross.
What are you fucking judging me for? Fuck you.
Oh no, I'm talking about you.
Do we want to try Pacanac?
I'm up for whatever.
Now remember, if we are, just don't alt tab.
Muscle Palace.
Well, don't alt tab. Just to be safe, don't fucking hit anything. Okay. Once this shit starts loading, just stop hitting shit. Don't fucking meme. Don't be an idiot. Don't fucking meme. Don't fucking meme.
Don't act dumb.
Sure,
Don't be
you
a
think
fucking
I
idiot.
like crashing. I don't.
Just don't meme. No memeing. All right,
What
here
are
we
we
go.
up on, fuckers?
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Some of us have
I'm
class
ready.
tomorrow.
I'm ready. I had the day off. You have no idea how much
I have
penis I
tomorrow
have
off.
to suck.
Butt cheeks, butt cheeks, butt cheeks, butt cheeks, butt cheeks, butt cheeks, butt cheeks.
Butt cheeks. This wireless headset is pretty fucking nice.
By the way, new Jason unlocks at level 44.
Oh fuck.
What the fuck?
No,
Kidding,
well,
right?
not. No.
Let me help Sabin Chuck.
No, you're joking though, right?
I
No.
am joking. I'm not gonna.
I'm not joking.
Is anyone
No.
here even close to 40?
I am 35.
Yeah.
Are you
how
actually going to
many
play him?
hours?
Remember, you
I
actually
don't
going
know.
to play him as opposed to part 2, Jason?
Okay, remember guys, don't hit anything.
Actually, from what I've
the wrath of Jamo Voorhees.
he's basically hard mode. He has negative shift, negative water speed, and negative traps. He can run though,
sprint.
like yeah, he can sprint, and he has high damage and high destruction.
He sprints in the movie.
Yeah, he like full on
I
marathon.
was
runs in, like-
really hoping that
Also,
they
new.
were
This is a blue guy
going
who
to
gets killed in the fourth movie.
I guess, yeah.
just so you know.
All right, remember RP. You gotta RP.
We'll play
Uh-oh.
Unless it black screen.
Well,
this is what I'm role playing as a black screen.
I swear it's just you.
It might actually be because Terry's hosting or something. Could be something with his.
No, it's not.
it's played before while I was hosting.
I don't know. Fuck.
Alright, well, leaving the match.
Yeah, I can't even leave. I have to crash out.
Then it's you then.
Yeah.
I've hosted on Pacanac before though.
Graham, why don't you?
It's not the. Oh.
I get to host.
Because we've never had
But it's
issues
just like that-
whenever we're the host.
It's
No,
the fact
we
that
do. You
Yeah,
guys
okay.
are forgetting everything.
We
You
do.
gotta remember, I haven't played this game for a month because I've been boycotting it.
Let's
Pussy.
your own.
'Cause
Puss
I'm
lips.
so
So,
angry.
so, do you guys want me to host or?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead and just bring it up. That might work.
Since you're so much better. Oh,
Have a
yeah.
list. Let's try some other maps first before packing out.
Has anybody ever heard of a band called Groves?
I have.
Because they played the opener for Electric Six and they were actually pretty fucking good.
They're pretty good. They,
By the
I
way,
felt
you
kind of bad
left
for
your
them though
CD
because...
in my car.
No, I didn't. I have one right here.
Oh, then I guess we had an extra one then.
Yeah, I'm
'Cause I
holding
have
mine right now.
mine fucking... Wait, did you buy their other album too? How much money
No, I
did
didn't
you
buy
spend?
it. I just have the free disc they gave me.
Oh,
Why?
Oh, but did you hear?
what?
United States failed to qualify for 2018 World Cup. We're not going to the World Cup.
What made us not qualify?
Trump.
No, just our players sucked.
I mean, that isn't surprising.
They couldn't get past qualifications. Like the
Alright, I just want to say I'm not
Who put
a...
these holes in my belts? That's a belt? That's what happens. People didn't England.
Not my
Okay.
belts.
Who put these holes in my pouch?
Alright, ready up, nerd.
Why
we're
is
not
no
all here.
Jason?
Oh, right. all I saw was MA.
But that's not me, I'm Jamon Voorhees.
Sure you were, kiddo.
I wish Pablo was here. We could at least play with Pablo. I need to go get tissues so I can blow my load.
Alright, apparently my fucking MS is shooting through the roof again.
That sounded sexual.
I love being able to be on the other side of our room and still listen to you guys.
Remember,
Yeah, I
Jamal,
can hear your reaction to this in real time. Jamal farted.
So we're killing him, right?
Oh yeah, every day.
I'm gonna be a sexy teenager. I don't know what you guys are doing.
I mean, I'm
So
sad
Jamal,
already.
if we do go to kill you, you're not gonna aim like a bitch, are you?
I'm going to scream like a bitch.
Okay, scream like a bitch. Don't leave like a bitch.
I didn't fucking. Okay, listen. I got so angry that I just.
Why are there holes in my
belt?
belt?
Why are there fucking holes in my dick? Fuck this game.
Dude, this game sucks.
Make them remember what they did to us, Jason.
What did you do it, Jason? Who did you do it?
Oh shit, I didn't even think about what kind of quips I want to do. Danger, danger. It's high voltage. Never know if this is gonna be situational, but might as well fucking do it. Oh right, that's right, I can't fucking put traps down. That's right. I forgot how the video game's played. Yeah. Oh, hello.
Alright, babe. I'm gonna go play catch with my dad. I mean, you know.
Your dad's gone.
You're my dad.
Then come here.
Go say hi to your son.
Father.
Child.
It's me.
Oh, fuck, you're black.
It's
Never
been
mind.
so
Hold
long.
on.
What? What? Give me no it.
Alright, fine. Give me a hug.
It's so good to see you.
The
It's
sweet,
so
comforting
good to meet
release.
you again. Why did you leave us?
I told you I needed cigarettes. On the bright side, I've quit smoking. Now I
It's been
vape.
years.
Come here and give your vaping dad a hug.
My dad isn't a hipster. It's a lie. You're a lie.
Listen here, champ. I've got some pigskins in my car. Well, toss that around.
You're less like a dad and more like a creepy uncle I see once every reunion.
Now, son, that hurts. Now, there's no need to call the
Sorry,
police on
Dad.
your
I
creepy
didn't mean it.
pedophile dad.
It's just been so long.
Come here. Touch me. Oh, fuck. Son.
I'm sorry. Violence is the only answer I've ever known.
Oh, for fuck's sakes. As soon as I teleport away, they get the fucking bear traps.
They're trying to take me, Jason. Stop them.
I forget where the thing is on this map. Oh wait, now I do. At least I thought I did. Fuck me. Come out and play. Your dad's only in town once a week. I have to go on a business trip again. Come out and see your dad. Remember our secret knock? Hello?
No one home?
It's me, your dad. You remember our secret knock? You know, the one that you would make me do if you were masturbating? So that way I wouldn't walk in on you? You know, the...
That's impossible. My dad left years ago.
I came back. I wonder. I have no idea where the fuck they were. Well, hey there, kiddo!
I'm just a cool dude. Oh, Dad! You're back!
Son, tell your friends not to mess with me.
Don't shoot my dad! I'll fucking
You're gonna
wreck
fuck
you.
up my pacemaker. Son, come here. I want to meet your friends.
Oh yeah, we got Angelica and Brad, I guess.
God damn it, they're getting away.
The red boys stayed ahead.
Yep.
Hey, fuck you guys!
And the cops just showed up.
God damn it. This is gonna be one of those games where I don't get anybody. Son, I just want to meet your friends.
I'm over here.
I'm sorry, you're all just red for me right now.
This is Brad over here.
I want to
He
meet
likes
him.
it when you use them strong hands.
Come here, I've got really strong hands.
You hear that, Brad? He's got really strong hands.
Well, that is good for massaging.
Well, that was a nice hit, actually. Fuck me. Well, shit, there's only 2 people left. It's Andar and fucking Terry, regurgitated as Jarvis. Hey, fuck you, 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 fuck. God damn it.
We meet again, Jason.
We do meet again, Jarvis.
It's me you want, remember?
Yeah.
Get back.
Get back.
That fucking hurt. And then I walk off. Oh shit, you're getting up quick. No. No, no. No, no.
Come back this way.
No. No. I'm a special boy. I'm a special boy.
You are a special
I'm
boy.
A special boy.
Get up, Jason. Find them. Kill them.
No.
You're going the wrong way, pal.
Look, we can talk. We can talk about.
Oh,
this
I can
shit.
break those.
I didn't know that was a thing.
You're getting me very mad now, Terrence.
No.
I mean, Jarvis.
They want to hurt you, Jason. Don't let them.
No, don't do it. Look, I'm just a special boy.
You are a special boy. Listen, my kids, they ran off without me. They left me behind.
They don't want you. I don't want you. Just fucking leave me alone.
I could just end this with an instant, but I'm not going to.
Just let me escape twice.
Listen, I don't want to leave my kids again. I just want to have a nice life with my kids. I regret leaving for scratch off cigarettes and booze. Here, let me help you for that. Alright, fuck this.
Come on. Oh! Tell me Jarvis was supposed to live.
I just miss my kids.
Oh my god!
How many times did I grab him?
like 4 or 5.
It's a bunch.
I took your mom's sweater, bitch. Still in there.
I can't believe it.
I didn't want to use an instant, but I had to. After I grabbed you for the 19th time.
Well, I mean, yeah.
By the way, fuck you and Benny, by the way.
Yeah, we got away.
You guys got away. I was trying to catch up the entire time.
Playing a different Jason.
Oh yeah, I have it set to random.
It gave you the worst one.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of shit.
Wait, the Spear Jason's like the best one.
No, we're thinking of the machete one that's bad.
Who wants to be Jason next?
I don't care.
Terrence?
I didn't get to do it last time, so I would appreciate playing it.
Alright, you want Crystal Lake or?
Yeah, Higgins Haven lags way too hard for me, so just do Crystal.
Fox?
Sorry for insta-killing you, by the way, Terry, but I had to.
You grabbed him like 10
whatever.
times, it's deserved.
I figured maybe you needed a little bit of blood.
I wanted to go back because that bridge had fucking 4 environmentals with it.
Stomach hurts. I ate too many carrots.
So you're not a fucking rabbit.
I made the joke too much times of like the neck snapping.
All right, now
thing,
listen.
and
Here's the thing. Did you, by any chance, eat those carrots with ranch dressing?
No.
Oh.
Ew.
All right, well, never mind. Fucking carrots and ranch dressing is delicious. Fuck you.
I literally just eat raw.
nasty.
I just eat raw carrots, dude.
All right, now that it might be a healthy snack, but it's disgusting.
You're disgusting.
I mean, it could have been ants on a log, but I was too lazy to get peanut butter.
So what are we waiting on right now?
I don't know. No one ready.
Because in the meantime, I'm gonna go downstairs really quick and grab something. Oh man! But don't worry, I have a wireless headset. I can just hear you guys.
Man, I really thought Jamal was gonna be pissed. Oh shit, he's still here.
Fuck you. Dick ass.
Let's wait.
Also, apparently Saints Row Dev is dead.
Yep.
What?
Apparently Agents of Mayhem didn't sell well enough, so they had to fire half their staff.
Well, that's why you make Agents of Mayhem co-op. Like promised.
They never promised that, though.
It was
It's
obvious
implied.
from the trailer.
It really wasn't implied, though.
Yeah, it was.
never-
You got a bunch of agents on screen.
No, you can't, actually. What you do is you switch between them, like weapons.
That's dumb.
It was a fun game.
Nah, they should have made it more like Borderlands.
Shit, apparently episode 2 came out 10 years ago today.
Also, they should have added all the Saints Row characters.
I mean, they added a few, and I was pretty happy with that. Oh, man.
Stop it.
Oh, apparently they have a... Oh. Oh, wow.
Huh?
They added a new skin for... the German guy. Just posted in chat really quick. This is... Yeah. Yeah, Germany. Germany.
Fuck you guys.
Oh,
my stomach ate too much food. I just went downstairs and got some pretzels. I heard you guys talking the whole time. I was actually trying to... You're talking about how Saints Row... Yes. You guys were talking about how Age of Mayhem was a disappointment.
I thought it was fun. I had fun with it. I would have been happier with new Saints Row game, but I just have fun with Agents of Mayhem.
I would have been happier with them.
Noob goes, I guess episode 3 turned,
What?
episode 2 turned 10 today. It's yesterday, you dick ass.
Doesn't that make you feel old?
It's also the 10-year anniversary of TF2. Oh, get my butt. Nice. Hey, you.
Feels good without the implants in me, Jamal.
Look at my butt. Look at my butt. Look at my nerdy little butt.
Come on in, babe. Let's have an understall blowjob.
Yeah, we'll see that.
Yeah, be ready to get white out. I don't know. Fuck it. Let's go.
Steve Silverstein on the radio.
Can you fucking stop eating on the mic, please?
Hey, who the fuck are you to judge?
Steve Stevenson's got a battery.
I got gas and car keys.
You shouldn't say it like that.
Four-wheeler for a spin.
I'm so glad I'm the only person to hear that. So if this Rick doesn't have a walkie, fucking, he just burped for like 10 straight seconds.
Ew.
Oh god, a little bit came out of my mouth.
He's throwing up carrots.
East or west?
It's near the
I
lake.
ate too many carrots. Oh, my stomach.
Yeah, you know, Steve Stevenson doing. Oh, hi! What's the question?
Just kidding. Let's go see if we can fix up the phone. Ass lady.
No.
I like how I'm being referred to as ass lady right now.
I don't know.
I mean,
Probably Jenny.
Look, Jamal, you're the bottom.
Yeah.
And I'm
Look,
top.
Jenny's right over here. Say hi, Jenny.
And together we can
See,
make
she's in this house.
sandwiches.
I can't help it. I like purple so much.
You can be the burger girl. And we can
Now,
make
Mister, you're approaching me very negatively. I don't appreciate that. Oh, you should
there's
go.
a flare gun. Pick it up. Pick up the flare gun.
And my name is Steve Stevenson.
Flare gun. I'll fucking kill you. Now shoot the flare gun.
You are being awfully affront, Mister. Oh my, I did not mean to do that.
You're standing in the way. I can't pick this up.
Pick it up.
So,
Bend over slow.
what brings you out on this moonlight stroll?
Oh, I cut myself.
Oh no! No! No touchy!
I'm feeling better now.
I'm glad you're feeling better now.
I don't know how to sew! I suck with a thimble! They're whole and nut free, I swear!
Oh, gasoline actually. Join up gasoline.
I like gas. I got a fart fetish.
There's the gas that you want.
Gas.
Good old.
Help!
Why are there holes in my belt?
He wants to inspect my poop!
What?
He wants to inspect my poop!
I really wish you had a walkie right now, Fruit.
He wants my poop!
I get a walkie-talkie and the first thing I hear is to inspect my poop.
Somebody's after Groomhood's poop.
Help!
Fruit, just stop burping the game. It fucking echoes.
Oh,
Car's
hey!
here.
I'll be out there in a jiffy.
Run faster!
Okay, calm down. Let's go.
Oh, fuck.
Go, 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 go. Go, 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 go.
I got a case to get.
Go, 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 go.
I could smell the fucking
Let's go
carrots
for a
from here.
swim, baby. Come on.
I'm not dressed appropriate for
Water's
swimming.
fine. No, you're dressed for bondage or something. I
driving.
don't know.
I am.
They really did add acid.
Wait for me.
Don't run in the middle of the road, bro. I was gonna stop beside you.
Unlike my map actually.
Thanks, guys.
Oh, wasn't there a
What's up
fucking
ahead?
car
I
here?
believe the day I had.
Alright, they already
Get one
got
more
it.
or fuck 'em.
Nah, I mean,
so
we
bad
got a
news, Jamal.
pretty good size going here, right?
We're fucked.
Yeah, we are. For
Oh, who's that up ahead? He doesn't look very nice.
Oh no, he's not. He tried to touch my poop.
Gross.
Wait, there's another car. We can go towards it. I believe
Did they
Noob to
take
die.
the 2-person or the 4-person?
No, Jamal, take a right. Car's the other way. Right.
Sorry, hold on.
It's right in the outhouse. There's a nice hole in the outhouse, baby. So that you can see if there's anyone
I'm more impressed
approaching
that you managed to like open the can while moving and holding down the talk button.
Ah, shit, dude, it's coming towards us.
Great. Now we gotta deal with that guy.
Okay, I'll walk on.
Now Jason's gonna find us because of
My
you.
keys will help, I guess.
Alright, fine, fuck it. We'll work together.
I brought Jason with me though.
There's no Jason here. Hey, sir, have you seen any Jasons around here? No. Sir, please. Don't get handsy with the goods, you know what I'm saying?
Sir, I have this belt. Do you want to put holes in it?
Fuck those girls, I'm out of here.
Sup, bitch?
We need to leave now. Put gas in there.
Do you have the battery? Hey noob, am I still holding the gas can for you?
Nope, let's get in the car there.
Alright, I guess I just duplicated fucking gasoline.
I'm out of here.
Let's go with our swimsuits. Hey, you look familiar.
Oh shit, Dad found out I put holes in his belt. Oh.
No. The fucking nice evasive maneuvering. Go left. Go left!
I put holes in your belt. It was me.
Oh, this fucking sucks.
I don't think he's
I feel
happy
bad
with that.
Then where'd he go?
Go left. Left whenever you get to the exit.
You mean right?
Left!
Hide the whole.
Fuck you two, by the way, for taking the 4-person.
We saved 3 people.
Yeah,
Fucking Fruit and I got a goddamn gas can. We go all the way to the fucking 4-seater. Watch you guys leave with us.
Right there, so
I feel kind of
We
bad.
are fucking down at the boathouse. We look over and just see you guys all pile in and fucking drive off.
I feel bad because fucking Jamal had gas, and in the first house I walked into after they put the gas in there was fucking had a battery. I'm like, okay, Jamal, we're leaving. I have the keys.
What is Terry doing? He's looking.
By the way, I really wish Fruit had a fucking walkie-talkie because the entire time we were playing, he was just burping so goddamn gross. They weren't even like bad ones. He was just going like really close to the mic, just like. Oh, that one was gross.
This isn't exciting to watch. It's more like suspense.
He was asking me how long he had, and I'm like, how long he had? It's like, oh, 10 minutes. He's like, oh, 11 minutes. He's like, oh, fuck.
We're doing it live.
I think he found him.
Let it be known I'm not dying like a bitch.
Did Jason just T-pose for a second?
And I'm probably gonna lose horribly.
Oh, hey, Jarvis. Oh no, Jarvis, he's gonna call one of us.
You ready to be Jarvis?
Well, whoever it's gonna be.
Oh, power's out, thank God.
Oh, this sucks. There's a head.
Also, little fun fact, that radio is the same radio that Jarvis has in his room. Is it good?
Yeah. He's checking all the porta potties.
Well, there's gotta be
Who
power box
messaged him saying, check the porta potty? To try and speed this up.
My friends may left me for dead.
Oh no. Did you find him?
Racial reasons, but I'm gonna keep moving.
Not.
One. I'm about to Tropic Thunder this shit. I hear Jason because he forgot to turn on stalk early enough, so I know he's here.
This is the most suspense-fueled game
What's
of
up?
cat and mouse.
I'm glad
Oh.
you didn't flush those sins.
Like that, asshole!
You think you're gonna get away from me?
I like how I'm driving away and I scream. I'm the one that put holes in your belt. God, fuck.
I don't know what I love about fucking Jason being on the ground and then just hearing, you think you're gonna get away from me?
I'm ready. You think I'm not prepared for you? Oh man. Let's go.
Oh shit.
Oh, no.
Fire,
I think we need to make
really?
ourselves a little
Oh.
brisket. Oh,
That's racist.
it sure is.
That's just offensive. Oh my god.
You're the only one left. I'll resort to fucking insta-killing you if I need to.
Why did he do that?
I know what I have to do. I have to stop all the ghosts that are coming through. I'm here to fight.
I'm being told by Mother that you put the holes in my belt.
Oh, that
Was it
sucks.
you?
Hey, someone's using the boat to escape right now.
Stumble saved him.
Wait, humor me.
Oh, that was lag.
Back to this fucking... Yeah.
He was up pretty fast.
Oh yeah, they reduced stunt time for Jason.
Yeah, I noticed last game.
Shit on my dick, shit on my dick, shit on my dick. Shit on my dick.
Can you somewhere, or is it not open?
Ah, fuck.
Hey,
Shit
friend.
on my dick.
Let's go for a swim.
Pizza belly.
That doesn't work as well as you think it would.
There's should be shallow kills, like shallow water kills now.
Yeah. I know, right? No. You know I can't swim.
Oh,
bastard.
One foot in front of the other.
That doesn't even make sense, but...
What happened?
That's pretty smart. You drop him over by the water.
How did you drown in fucking 4 feet of water?
Y'all motherfuckers left me.
You did. You guys fucked them.
I feel bad because you
guys juked the fuck out of me
escorted-
twice in
you
like
ex-
cars
you-
full of people.
You
That
escorted
fucking
fucking
sucked.
you escorted Jamal all the way to the car, and I happen to have the car keys, and the first door I open has a battery. It's like Jamal, good to fucking go.
I somehow
You know
managed
this isn't
to
over yet, right?
duplicate a fucking gas somehow.
You know this isn't over yet. You think I'm? That just makes me angrier when you run from me.
I'm the one that put holes in your belt. I don't know if you heard that when I was driving away.
Every time I don't kill you in one, makes me want to do it again. So now I think that's what, 3 times? 3 games in a row that I have to insta kill you if I find you?
Jesus.
Huh.
Well,
Oh.
I'll have to keep putting holes in his belt.
Wait, how do you do the emotes?
It's like
No.
C, I think.
To buy those, Jamal, they cost $6.
$60 per person. Who's Jason next?
I'll be Jason next.
I'll be Jason next.
Okay.
No, I'm not kidding, but maybe I'll be this time.
Also, thank you, Grim, for giving me a good quip to go off of whenever I play Jason. Because I couldn't think of anything, and then Grim was like, "It's my dad!" So then I started playing as a father figure. I want to meet my kid's friends.
Spreads everyone angry at the fact that we all got away, except for one.
So did you hear about the new DLC pack?
Oh, Rusty.
The new counselor. It's
Yeah.
Rebecca Black.
Oh my god, it's Friday.
It's Friday. Also, I really wish somebody, or no, I really wish Fruit had a fucking walkie the entire last game.
Why?
Just fucking nuzzling my chest, like in my bosom, burping nonstop. Dar, ready up. Dar.
Who's Ando?
The Canadian.
Alright.
Fucking the whole game.
I'm making you all a deal.
Fruit was basically nuzzled up inside of me, and he was just going.
Find me, noob. Find
and
me,
over
noob,
again.
and you'll all live.
You know I will. You don't even have to fucking say I'm gonna live. I'll help you find him just because. I'll find him and I'll walk next to him screaming.
Oh, I just farted and thought it would cue the mic, and it
You
didn't.
farted almost dead.
Nah, I
New
didn't
game
play
mode,
you.
Hunt the noob.
New game mode, figured out
How
who's
about
shit.
We can always do bodyguard Jason. Jason protects one counselor and all the other counselors have to kill that counselor.
Oh man, I got the same butt. got the sudden urge to shit now. Oh, Jesus. Well, that'd be nice if I didn't have the perk. Hey, girl. That's growth. There's a walkie and a map over here if you need it.
I don't think I trust you
good.
guys. You're gonna kill me.
Inside this building. Maps in here. The walkie's back here.
Thanks, me.
Fuck you. So is there anything up that way? Fucking little bitch.
Nick, who I spawned in the third house?
Well, you're a lot of help.
Do it. Do it, faggot. How dare you?
That's some mean words you got there.
I'll put the radio on for him.
Wow, nobody's done anything yet. Hi, girl. Oh, I see
Boy,
how
what
it
you
is.
talking about?
Bitch.
I ain't no girl.
Oh.
But you a fine ass honey.
Fuck you.
If you're near me, you scared the absolute shit out of me.
Fucking pig.
I can't tell it was a game bugging up. I opened the door
Yeah,
and
you
suddenly
know
I
it.
had to
Oink,
explode.
oink.
Grimmer's way too good at that kind of shit.
God, I did that too well. Hang around.
I was just saying you do that way too well.
I found a cassette tape!
I think Grim found a cassette tape.
Oh, I feel validated. All my suffering has been worth it. Fuck it, Jason can kill me now. I don't care anymore.
And I don't get it.
No, I found a cassette tape. You don't understand.
Is that like a rare item or whatever?
Yes.
Yeah.
It has a very low chance of spawning. And it's all mine. If you guys want it, you'll have to kill me for it.
Okay.
Hey girl, hey. You wanna go? You wanna go, ho?
I want your copy of pet sounds on cassette.
Man, fuck you. This is Sonic CD.
Man, fuck Sonic CD. It's a bad game. Actually, no. Sonic CD is a good Sonic game. Unlike that shitty Sonic Adventure 2.
I'm gonna go swimming.
Wanna fight? Those are fight nerds.
I'm not dressed to go swimming.
Yeah, you are. You're in a swimsuit. Go swimming.
No, this is my bondage gear.
Yeah, what?
My bondage gear.
Fuck.
Bondage
Honey,
is
that ain't
existed in the
bondage. That's
80s.
vanilla as fucking shit.
Fuck you.
You wanna talk about bondage? You gotta go into that, CBT.
CBT.
Cock and balls torture. Yeah, yeah, I'll give you a taste of bondage. Oh shit, someone stepped in the bear trap.
God
Yeah,
damn it.
you. It was you. Hang on, I can undo it. Maybe, probably. I'm gonna set this.
You're set that. Well, Grim, what are you doing? Grim. Thank
Why?
you. Boy, what you wonder who fucking did that?
Yeah, girl. See, that's what I'm talking about. That's BDSM.
BDSM.
Fucking stepping your foot in a bear trap. That's kinky as fuck.
And kill him.
Can't we talk about this?
Hey, girl, ain't nothing in there. I already got the thing. My boomstick. Also, I got a gun.
Please.
Oh, thank God.
Let's go. We're gonna go take a dip. You're gonna like it. I'm gonna shoot you.
Oh shit, there's friendly fire back.
Do it again, do it again.
I don't wanna.
Some fine ass water. Why am I
Fucking fine ass water.
Yeah, you know
You almost killed me.
that A grade H2O.
Oh, I can't go this way.
Bitch, you've been making so much noise doing that breaststroke.
Sorry, I got big titties.
Where they at?
They're on vacation. Fuck off. Oh, hey, this is where I spawned.
Yeah, there's nothing here. You already raid all these houses?
Yes,
Why did you say something?
because I didn't know where we were heading.
Get your ass in that bed.
I have lost the ability to interact with things, apparently.
I understand that the game's mechanics allow this.
Oh,
But
wonderful,
you
I'm
must be
bugged. Put me out of my misery.
Tempted. Nah, fucking you suffer.
But I can't do anything. I can't fucking do shit.
You can stay in this house. You're locked in there.
I live here now. I can't leave at all.
Ooh.
You do live here.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, get them bitches, Jason.
I would like to buy the ability to interact with things again.
Jamal, I open the door for you.
I can't fucking
I'll
do
open the door, don't
anything.
worry.
They need a high IQ to understand this Rick and Morty stuff.
I'd try to save you, but I can't.
Well, oh no. And you're making a big mistake.
And
Sorry.
Terry, did they call the police?
Nope.
Shit. Because that's the only way I can escape. I can't fucking interact with anything.
No, not the bear trap.
Wow, that's not good.
It isn't. I need somebody to call the police.
You find the fuse and you find the thing I'll call my dad's Bob.
See, here's the thing. I can't find shit.
Away from
No.
me, cover you with my hands.
Cover me all over
Actually,
your body.
I'm about to die, probably.
I can't do anything.
Drop Robin again. So holding that. Right now.
I think you might
Look
have
at that.
cured
I
me.
can't aim the gun.
Yeah, you've cured me, and I just wasted that.
I think I'm glitched.
Cool.
I can't aim the gun! I can't aim!
Why was it targeting team?
I don't know. I can't aim. It's not letting me. What the? What's going on? Everything's lagging.
Oh, hey, somebody died here.
Is that a dead body?
What's going on?
I'm not fucking doing this. The fucking thing's stuck.
You're stuck?
Giving Benny a proper bird.
Can we not kill each other now? What's going on?
You're stuck in the thing. It's good enough, I guess.
There we go. We gotta burn our own. Oh wait, shit, no, it's bury our own and burn the rest. Fuck.
Benny says the things here.
Things where?
Fuses apparently in here.
Yo, dude, we can talk about this. I'm really good at interpretive dance. You like interpretive dance? Alright. Check these moves out. I call this the gotta go jig. You go like, and then the next move is like this, and then the finale goes like this. See?
Fucking fix it,
Now,
dude. Goddamn.
you understand the message of my
You're
dance.
behind me.
Fix it.
Man, everybody's a critic.
Fix it, fix it, fix it, fix it, fix it.
How did I survive?
He's nearby. I can smell him.
I could smell him farting.
I did not find it. Maybe it's in our room.
Stop ghosting. It's unimmersive.
I got a board.
I got a bat.
Man, I can't believe he didn't like my interpretive dance.
A bat is like a board, but it's been shaved down.
I think a bat's actually thicker.
It's like me. I'm sick. Power's up. There's a map here if you need it.
I don't.
Guys, be really quiet. I'm gonna kill you, but please don't scream, okay?
My parents don't allow me to be loud.
Yeah, I know, right? Aw, man. You know, when you're running, I'm gonna have to overraise her. I don't want to put that loud, okay? Please.
This is Skylar Mihiggins. Anyone have a first aid kit?
I believe.
I'm hurt. Alright, I'm heading towards this little dot on my map. Is this you? Do you have a health pack? Health anything?
Here, take this
Some
medkit.
aspirin, Neosporin, fucking Pepto-Bismol.
That fucking hit you too.
Profidin. Love it.
Nah, dude, that's Excedrin. Fucking
Oh, it's
spray
bullshit. I was out
Excedrin.
of there. Whatever.
So, like, what are we doing?
What do we do in this situation?
Yeah.
Run and hide and cry.
Oh. Alright.
Just you go on ahead. Just stare at my ass.
Did you say something? I'm sorry, I got distracted.
Let me sit on your face. Stop humping me.
Guys, quiet down.
What?
Quiet down, guys. Please.
He said he's leaving. What the nuts?
Oh.
Quiet down. Please.
Oh, I thought you said something else. Damn! She broke the fence!
Don't fuck with me.
What I'm breaking. I'm gonna fuck.
That was insane!
You're too loud.
Hey, no!
Shh. You're too loud.
No!
God damn it! Fucking.
Ooh, the mask.
Oh
Hey.
God. You're being too loud, Grim.
Alright, fuck the bat. I'm just trying to get out of here with my butt.
Come on.
No! Oh. No! Help! Help!
I don't want to have to heal you, but I will.
I'm covered in raspberry jam.
Just take a chill pill.
Help!
Dude's gotta die.
Pick his
You're being
pockets!
too loud.
Pick his pockets!
Well, that didn't do anything. Alright, I'm out of everything.
Work.
Wait, maybe I could distract her with my ass.
Use your ass. They're your best weapon.
Oh shit, he's
Okay.
gay!
No!
Alright, look, I'm just gonna have to I'm gonna keep you here for a bit. I'm just gonna stash you here.
No!
I'll be back in a bit. Just quiet down, please, okay?
No! Stupid hitbox. Not registering my thing.
Two.
Oh! I just want to point out, I was,
hope you all appreciate
yeah,
that.
I was going through all the people that were alive, so I go to Terry and then I go back to you and I just hear you mid-scream.
Who else is left?
Terry, he's playing Monster Hunter.
Yeah, it's just Terry.
He only has a minute left.
Shit, this guy's got it. He's being too quiet. You know what? I think he's earned to live.
The fuck?
Sorry. Well, I guess
He
I
just
think
has to
I'm
lose for 20 seconds and he wins.
I've earned the right.
Destroys the radio. Game over. You lose.
No, Terry led him to noob, didn't he? Terry does live no matter what.
Where were you hiding?
Yeah, I did it, everybody.
Did you just hide under a bed the whole fucking game?
No, I ran around a lot actually. I was in one of the sleeping bags for a little while, and then I chased Noob around screaming, and then I got hit upside the head with a frying pan by Andar, so I stopped. And then I went over by the boat and kind of sat there for a little bit, and then I went to a bed in the last 2 minutes.
You guys are too loud.
Are we really?
Fuck you and your quips.
Man, I got to live with my interpretive dance. I'm so glad.
I'll do one more.
But everyone needs to have a
I'm done.
Okay.
Jamal, you actually lasted a surprisingly long time.
Yeah, I did too.
Considering Benny died first.
I'll see you guys on Friday.
See you
Yeah. Friday.
Bye, Andar. You're too loud.
Eat a dick.
I didn't hear your shtick this time. What was your shtick?
We were too loud.
Oh, okay.
I think he was trying to go for like a very seductive librarian or something.
I don't think I saw you fucking once this entire time.
I just kept whispering, like, guys, you're being too loud. Can you quiet down?
Oh shit.
You guys want to try one on Packanack, actually?
We'll do. Yeah, fuck it. Let's give it a shot.
Sure. Just don't fucking hit anything. Maybe it's Andor that's doing it.
Yeah, fucking Canadian people.
So wait, Terry, where were you at the end of the game?
On the other side of the bridge, by the 4-person car?
I knew I should have checked.
I was on the side with the boat in the big house.
I was thinking of checking that, but I'm like, eh. You were being quiet. You were being quiet, so I let you live.
Okay. I wasn't being quiet the whole time.
Look, you're too loud. Guys, I alt-tabbed.
Guys, I turned off my computer.
Well, I'll do it.
Packanack launch, more like pancake launch.
Yay!
Yeah, I can leave this one.
I'm done for the night, I think.
Yeah, me too. What is this game shit?
Is that why you picked Packanack?
No, I actually kind of wanted to play Packanack because I like Packanack. Although I've only been streaming for about 2 hours, so if you guys want, I'll continue playing Overwatch or something.
Sure.
I'd be down for a game of Overwatch.
Real game?
No.
How many pupils do we have?
6.
A lot.
I have an unread chat
Video.
message from Snarklepuss from an hour ago. He just said, "Oh."
If there's not enough, I don't mind either if I play or not.
Yeah, me and Benny can do the Halloween event. You guys can.
Okay.
I gotta go.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm a either or. So if the party's full, it's fine. If it's not, I'll hop in.
Well, if Fruit's gone, we should... Yeah, we have enough room.
No. Halloween event is 4 people.
Yeah, it's 4
I was gonna do
people.
quick play.
Yeah, we were just gonna play regular games.
Reg. Game.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, non-competitive fun.
Good old-fashioned competitive.
Non-competitive fun.
Good old-fashioned competitive. Man, I'm fucking tired. Holy shit, I might go to bed here soon. Oh.
Hopefully you die in your sleep.
Yeah, I think about that.
Here you go.
Oh my god, screaming and jumping up and down made me really tired. What do you got?
Oh, I got the new May skin. Yay. And now I
More
can
like
be
the
a
new-
Chinese Nazi lady.
Zombie.
What?
Zombra. This should be a skin. Why isn't that a skin?
They're gonna get her masquerade outfit.
No, Zombra. She needs to be a...
Oh, I need to look as annoying as I play.
Yes, I got the new Zarya skin.
Yes. Oh.
Said nobody ever.
Dude, I love that guy.
Invite me.
It did.
Invite me.
Give me a second.
does Doomfist get anything new?
He got
You get nerfed.
Where that guy's 5th plugin? Alright, it's intro thing.
I would like to play in this game.
By the way, voice lines, all of Zenyatta's voice lines are changed with the new
Not all
Halloween
of them.
skin. No, yeah, all.
There's a couple that aren't.
That's the shadow of
Apparently all of
Yeah,
his
Frick bought it, so we know this.
all of his arms are replaced with
tentacles. Yeah,
It's fucking Lovecraft.
bullshit.
It's good.
Bullshit.
Hey, I got the other player icon.
Oh, the Pachamaru?
Hey Terry, is your Battle.net snorkel?
Yes.
Okay.
No, you just said it, somebody landed. You fool! Fool!
That's the thing, and tell me if they're dabbing or not, okay?
What about dabbing?
Tell me if we're dabbing or not? What? I didn't even know what dabbing was 4 months ago.
Wait, do I... Wait, thing. Wait, do I not have the fucking Doomfist? Jamal, put the Doomfist thing on. Just...
What?
Don't you have the Doomfist, like, Olympics thing that looks like he's dabbing?
Yeah, I do actually. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it?
Sent you a friend request.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, so I'll accept it.
Does it look like he's dabbing right now?
Kind of. I think he's trying to throw a shot put though.
Oh, I know he is, but I mean, looks like he's dabbing.
You're dabbing.
Yeah, he's
Oh,
dabbing.
maybe I am. Ever think about that? Maybe I eternally dab. No, no rest.
Furthest love. Da, da, da. Wow.
Why does the maker have anything new?
Oh, cool.
She has the voice line.
Everyone has a voice line.
Cool, she's got the voice line. Not voice line.
Skin is so sexy.
I know, it's fucking great and I want it. I got some pretty cool stuff for Ana.
God damn it,
I want the Symmetra one.
That's pretty great too.
I need my
Spent
dragon sim.
$10 on boxes.
Select your hero.
I want to play Ana. Oh, I also got Roadhog skin. That's cool.
What should I be?
You need some DPS.
Actually,
Okay.
we could definitely use a tank actually. Or not
Well,
either.
a tank. Honestly, anything.
We
We
have
could use
free
another
DPS.
support. We could use
It's
DPS.
casual. Play whatever you want.
That is true. But if you pick wrong, I'll fucking unfriend you.
Time to pick combo.
Everyone's gonna unfriend.
World is
Hey, does anybody
Terry
want
timed the little...
some candy?
Watch, my first time hitting the ball since I've come back, and they look at I did it.
You were once a legend. But what are you now? Just a shell of a woman.
I take it you don't want my autograph then.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Round 1. Capture the objective.
Left behind.
Capture the objective.
Objective.
Oh, stupid Farah.
Thank you for tanking me through all of that.
Got rid of the fire for us.
Thank you.
Oh shit! You guys should have warned me the entire enemy team was on the point.
No.
No. Reach the ball. Attacking the point.
Much better.
What a hard champion to play.
Symmetra?
She seems like she's such a difficult champion to play.
I mean, she is, but she isn't. I know you're joking by that, but I mean.
I'm taking the objective.
Alright, down.
No! Why are you leaving me? You fucked me! You fucked me! Whoever's playing me, you fucked me!
I'm sorry, I fucked you.
You fucked me. Oh my god! Oh, if that's highlighted, I'm gonna fucking show it to you, you piece of shit.
I'm sorry.
You fucked me
I fucked you. I saw it from the enemy's point of view. I fucked you. I'm sorry.
Hey!
Oh no, I'm sorry.
Help me find
You
it.
did it again, you piece of shit.
I got fucking booped. No, I got charged. So, I think I know what we need.
To win?
We need a Junkrat.
I mean, seeing as they have a Zarya on matches and a Diva, I'm gonna have to calmly disagree with you. But I mean,
you know what? How do I switch champions again? I forget.
When you're dead, H.
H. Okay.
Everyone is
Gotta go
counting
fucking
on
Mercy.
me.
I haven't played the new Mercy yet.
We're all soldiers now.
You needed
They've got a teleporter. We've got to find it.
They got a
Enemy
teleporter.
teleporter destroyed.
Hey, Potter.
No one
Get to the edge, I can heal you!
We all
Wow, you're gonna get real close to fucking res, don't you?
Kill Tara! Kill him! Why are you on such a close quarters map?
Objective fail.
FFS.
0
I'm not a young man anymore.
free freaky sex. You know?
Freaking Santa.
Lip flame soon.
You freaking fricks.
Freaking frick Sonic. That's it. That's what it means. Freaking frick Sonic.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Round 2. Capture the objective.
He's like, oh no, we were doing bad, and he wastes 2 of his blinks running into a wall.
Hey, what else do you expect?
For your own safety, get behind the barrier.
Look behind us. He's targeting me! Oh, thank you, you saved me.
So you guys know your anti-air is dead.
That fucking
Knock
Winston
me
needs
down
to
and
die.
I'll keep getting back up.
The enemy has a shield
I died.
generator.
How'd you all die so quick?
Have mercy.
No one can hide.
Oh god, save me!
Trying.
I've got you in my sights.
Thank you. You're my hero.
Well, it's not gonna matter for long.
I destroyed all of Symmetra's stuff, so get in there.
Fuck me. Hello. Fuck me.
Initiating objective
Fuck me. Hello. Fuck me.
I thought they got rid of that.
This
What?
old
No, they-
dog's learned a few tricks.
See, Mercy doesn't have an ult now? Is that what you're thinking?
No, the cooldown reset. Remember?
They did. Oh no, that's in the PTR.
Oh boy, here comes the lag again.
Come here and get stabilized.
The enemy has a shield generator.
I'm not a young man anymore.
I'm not a small boy anymore.
I'm a small man.
I'm just gonna charge into them and start swinging.
I've got you in my sights.
Dein Schutzengel ist da.
I've got you in my
Get out
sights.
awkward.
Resist.
I'm dead.
Oh yeah. I did slightly more than what I could.
Hello.
Together, gemeinsam kämpfen wir.
The enemy has a shield generator.
I could use some help!
Trying.
They are targeting me. I always target me.
Your Mercy. I'm surprised you guys aren't targeting the Mercy.
I was trying, but just nailed them.
Yeah, you're right. I should have targeted the Mercy.
Play of the game.
I forgot about that.
It's a horrible aim. It's fucking thing.
Double kill. Double kill.
I don't know.
Yeah. Whee!
Leave this shit.
Oh, 2 enemies. What the fuck? Oh! I just got the new Reaper skin and the new Tour skin.
I have to do Twitch skin.
Wait, is it? Oh. Oh, never mind. Just the lighting.
Okay, I was doing it. Did you acknowledge why I said this now?
Which skin?
I got the new Twitch skin.
Is there actually a Twitch skin?
No.
Oh, man. I'll fucking get my hopes up like that. Oh! I got the new Zenyatta skin.
You fuck. You fuck. You fuck.
Now I got the McCree skin. How many more skins do I need? Jesus. I still need the Anna skin. Did D.Va get a new one? No. I still need the Sumimtra.
Johnny Graham.
I don't know who else needs a skin.
Ooh, what is this?
It's the Halloween icon.
Prepare your defenses. Select your hero.
Oh, we're defending.
I thought for a second you just did this.
Oh yeah, Doomfist.
No tanks.
It's my doom.
I'm not even saying it now.
I'm sorry.
I'm not going to fucking even say it.
Jamal, what's your opinion on that? Please tell me in detail.
I'm not even gonna fucking say it.
True self is without form. Greetings.
Hello.
How disappointing.
Hello there.
I sense within you the same rage that once consumed your brother. We are nothing alike. Greetings. Greetings.
Attackers incoming in 30 seconds.
I will not juggle.
Be right back. I'm out of here.
Understood.
5.
I understood that his lines were different.
3, 2,
They
1.
During his attacks and stuff.
Defend objective A.
Oh my god, that's a beautiful shot. Fred's pissed off that man.
Wow, I have no idea how to play this fucking champion.
Okay, so your best your charge, basically your right click, you charge up, the more you charge, the farthest someone goes.
Well, yeah,
The harder they
I
hit.
mean, I get that,
Yeah.
but when it came down to, I was like, oh, I got this champion, this is pretty easy, and then I got into it.
Careful, Benny.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff to keep track of here.
Not having a tank is probably killing us.
Oh, it definitely is.
Alright, I'll fucking switch, I don't want to play this guy. Fuck this asshole.
If only we had hit scan to get rid of that Pharah.
Oh, you know the one that is left? I was Widowmaker, I was taking care of it, but I stopped.
I was talking more Hanzo, but okay, I guess if you want to put yourselves in those shoes.
Fuck you.
Hanzo's not hit scan though.
He is.
No, he's not.
He's an archer.
It's not hit scan.
Whatever.
Hit scan's like 76.
Your setback is only temporary. Walk in harmony.
Where's everybody?
Hell. Got rid of their Pharah.
Greetings.
You have a charge, remember that.
Yeah?
I'm just saying, when they crowd up like that, kick their ass.
Listen, son! I'm your dad.
Yeah.
Oh, hello.
The cycle begins anew.
Shield generator online.
Forgot how much I hate this fucking game when I'm tired.
Yeah. Almost as much as GTA.
Wow, their McCree's really good.
Be consumed by the shadow.
I'll never understand people.
Rains from above. Fire.
It's so hard to.
Double.
I love that Verizon ringtone.
Yeah, I just got a new phone.
What'd you get?
Galaxy S7.
Nice.
I'm due for an upgrade this month. I just need to go out and do it. Getting that Note 8, baby.
Oh, they gave Roadhog more health.
See, fruit just randomly appears whenever there's Roadhog back stated.
The greetings.
You guys need to do something about that tracer.
I'm taking care of the fair, and I mean, I'm dead now. That's fine.
That tracer is pretty much the bane of any tank's existence.
You can hook.
I can hook. All right.
No, that's a legit strategy.
It's a legit strategy if you can hit somebody, but apparently this guy's a fucking competitive play goddamn tracer.
Oh, why did someone fucking...
Oh, I just realized something. We never get to hear Heroes Never Die anymore. Is that
No,
not...
She said it's not as often.
Yeah, but it's not a fucking alt line now. It's not global.
No, it's...
I killed the tracer.
Let's just look at the Hero's hand. It's new. It's Wednesday, my dudes.
Confidence is a flimsy shield.
The payload is approaching its destination.
Experience nothingness.
Even such kind of experience. They experience the boy with him.
Der Kampf ist noch nicht vorbei.
I feel bad for this fucking Honda. It's just the match I'm watching.
Tracer's going back around to the back. Maybe not.
Some of this fucking testicle drive me insane, though.
Why do we have a level fucking 8 Hanzo on our team?
There's no turn in.
He's 208. He's prestige.
I don't even see this prestige on him.
It's the two stars.
I don't see the stars. He just looks like he's level fucking 8 for me.
Peace be upon you.
No one can hide from my sight.
Oh, I got the tracer.
I see a sniper.
What? He immediately took it out with one bomb.
I'm dead.
Fuck me.
My shield generator has been destroyed.
Advert greetings. Gaze into the iris. Experience nothingness.
No one can hide.
This fucking Tesla coil sound is driving me fucking nuts.
Someone's dead. Someone's dead. Oh.
She's going behind.
He's dead.
Now the Pars and the Mercy's going behind too, so she's probably gonna revive her.
I was about to fucking say why bother rezzing with fucking Mechless Diva, and then I remembered, oh wait, they get a fucking free mech with every res.
He did to me.
That's a good deal.
No one can hide.
Free Coke with every order of 5-piece McNuggets.
They're behind us too.
Where the fuck is everybody?
I got her in my trap. Kill her.
Generator online. Defense matrix established.
60 seconds.
Fucking Tracer.
I got shot by it.
This will protect us.
Adversity is an opportunity for change.
Someone's on the
30 seconds remaining.
Thank you.
Experience nothingness.
10 seconds remaining.
Victory will soon be ours.
Holy shit, are we about to fucking win this?
Probably not.
Why'd you say that?
Oh, here they come.
Fucking demon got up in the thing. Wow.
GG.
Whoops. I forgot about that.
Look at that, I have good sportsmanship.
Play
Yes!
begins.
Oh.
I fucking knew this was gonna be play of the game. Watch this shit.
You're welcome for this.
Double kill. Triple kill.
And then you all done.
King.
Just gonna vote myself for that.
Fuck you, I voted for myself.
I mean, obviously you're wrong, but it's okay.
Yeah, but I'm the healer.
You're entitled to your wrong
Fucking
opinion.
solo healed as a Zenyatta.
Hey,
Didn't
Lupa.
do a very good job of it.
I always keep a track of their. I want to ask you guys. Did you guys know they had a Widowmaker?
No.
Yeah.
They had a Widowmaker.
Yes. I was
He was
keeping
actually
her.
fucking with me a little bit.
I kept her at bay for the most part.
Actually, I had no fucking idea.
The Widowmaker and the Fair was a bit harder to deal with. The Widowmaker, what they kept doing was they would stand still whenever they were about to shoot at me. So I was like, oh cool, peek out and shoot. Never mind.
Yes!
I hope that one day I can suffer the rest of
Means you're
I got the new fucking Anna skin. All I need now is like...
I like a fire.
I don't even know which one I need now.
I'm gonna keep playing Widowmaker.
I think this is the first event where I got all the skins, I think. Like on just the first day.
The first day too.
Well, didn't you buy like 50 fucking boxes?
Yeah, but he's utilized 15, gets like half.
I do that every single time there's an update. Every single update I buy 50 loot crates.
You're going to be okay.
Even though I spent a lot of money today that I probably don't have. But fuck it, I get paid the next time I go to work, actually.
I'm in A. I'm in A.
I like that they made Bash.
Okay, bye.
Okay. Not enough gay players. That was wrong. Let me phrase that.
Not enough gay players? Is that what you're
I was thinking of, I don't know what I was trying to say there. I don't know why I had that in mind. Why is there like things on with him? Oh, wait, why is Mercy's like old skin on this?
I think I just got a legendary from that, but I didn't get to see it.
Oh, there's a new map? What the
Yeah,
fuck?
plenty of it.
Junker Town.
Select.
Man, doubt. Widowmaker down.
Oh, you fucking took Roadhog.
I'm Pigpen Roadhog. Extra dirty. I'm a dirty boy.
Oh, I don't fucking know.
He's a dirty pig. Say whatever you want. I'll only judge you silently.
Be the Junker Diva.
Oh my god, that's so great. I love the fact that I could shake my head
I'll be Junker
around
Diva
with
then.
my headset on, and like the wire doesn't brush up.
You get rid of
fucking
it.
neck. Gone are the days of me accidentally hanging myself with my headset wire.
God damn it.
Hey, stand over there. Stand right there. Where I'm shooting.
Why are we able to shoot things? Yeah,
Shit,
we
look at
did
that.
it. Fuck that.
Loads up, loads up, loads up.
Money, money, money.
Look at that. One sec. Oh damn it! Someone took badge.
Commences in 30 seconds.
Oh, he's a Blitzcon skin. Shit. Look at that.
I got the BlizzCon skin too.
You do?
Yeah.
You have the Winston Bliss
I just never play fucking
I do.
Bastion.
You don't want to see it, but there you go.
You're covered.
I didn't realize there was a fucking Winston skin now. Are you still able to get that?
Yeah, it's like $40 though.
I might do that, just because I like having everything. In fact, I bought a third-party code so that I can have the Widowmaker Noir skin.
No, you didn't.
Yes,
I bought
did.
it for you.
Well, yeah, you did buy it for me. That's what I had to do to get it.
Oh, this is really weird. My
Sniper, be careful. You're going to live. This will only hurt you. I have your back.
Oh, I was muted.
I'm getting the fucking TFT vibe from this. The fucking classic
Good spray.
I like
This is the game that killed TF2 after all.
Yeah, it's funny that we're
Overwatch
playing
killed the
TF2 on we're playing Overwatch on TF2's 10th anniversary. Isn't that really
But we're
sad?
missing so much.
Go. I should be here.
There's some behind us.
I like this map. It feels very open. It feels very TF2 to me.
Yeah, I really hate it because you can actually use snipers.
There's somebody there. I wasn't paying attention. Quoting myself. Sorry, I was vaping and reading chat.
Listen to me, Steady. I've seen you. You're going to.
Someone behind us, look out.
You can't. Where behind us?
I just fucking heard sound.
I don't think. I'm starting to think the Sombra is harmless.
Hey, this reminds me of like. Oh fuck yeah! Keep on the corner. I got the shit on.
Shit on my dick.
Did you like game?
Watching your back.
Fuck!
Trap board. Is there a fucking Yu-Gi-Oh card named Trap board?
Yeah.
Probably.
I had 4 fucking health.
I've come back from work.
Well, I'm dead now.
My ultimate is charging.
Is Zayak? Hello.
What? Did you
I'm
all
in.
die?
My rip tire is charging.
Why doesn't Pirate Anna
Let's
save
keep
more?
the payload moving. No one can hide.
Maybe she does. You just don't realize it.
Is Zayak?
Kill me, please.
I know she has a new hello line, but it's in fucking...
Oh my god. I'm getting like CC'd as soon as my fucking...
Terry, let me know whenever you got ult. Because I got my
You're
ult.
not getting rid of
Who
me.
fucking
That
cares? I can't
is
stay
Zayak.
alive long enough to do anything.
Listen, just trust me.
G'day, mate. Torbjorn, ready to
How often are you guys dying?
Pretty often.
Dude, get a vantage point.
I'm behind you. Fucking watch.
God, I keep thinking that Roadhog's still unnerved. I keep thinking he's going to fuck me up.
You're going to be okay.
My ultimate is charged.
He was almost dead. Watch out.
Alright,
Need healing.
G'day, cover.
What happened to my bind for group up? God damn it.
My retire is almost ready.
Do you guys need a Reinhardt to protect you, or?
Much better.
It would probably help.
Yeah, 'cause we can do that cheap.
Healing enough.
Fuck.
So Mercy and Bastion die.
التكرار يعلم الشطار. ازيك؟ وريهم في الوجه.
I've got an ulted big boy.
You're going to.
Is in my charge. Let us move it. Armor.
Nice.
Ah, we're just get in there.
Come here.
oh, CC, I love CC.
G'day.
I'm not ready to hang it up.
Need healing.
If you want res me, eyeball.
Hello.
Wait, don't
dude.
do that.
You're fine.
I'm waiting for you.
Armor over. Soldier 76 reporting for duty. I shall seize it.
You doing this?
Let's do it.
Armor up.
You're covered.
Let's go.
You're powered up. Get in there.
Not doing a good job of making me
Oh,
proud.
sorry, I got one kill. I'm sorry. Fucking, it's kind of hard whenever I'm being thrown against the wall.
Yeah, it looked like fucking Pig Boy did his same time.
Good job. Oh, damn it.
They're behind us. Widowmaker.
No idea what this leads to.
And I'm fucking dead again. Okay.
Fuck, I really wish I could hit. Okay. There goes half my accuracy stat right there. And there goes even more. Oh. Alright, I am now the bartender of this establishment. Forever.
You're going to live.
Get behind my shield.
I'm just the game.
These Mercy's ult even do now?
Makes you really strong and fly around.
You ever play Smash Brothers Brawl?
She can heal faster. She can damage boost better. She can fly around instantly. And she does a lot more damage. You don't have to reload.
And you can fly.
Behind us.
No, it's a good thing it was completely wasted. That's fun.
Fuck.
Okay.
لسه في نت. Hello. This will help.
Okay.
Well, I just tried to heal you, but
Thanks.
kind
Doesn't matter. I got pulled in by like 13 different CCs. So.
Kill Diva. Also, that Ana's very
Damn it.
I thought I just saw the half-life.
Go. I'll keep you healed.
What the fuck?
Are you fucking kidding me?
Fitz wants me. He wants me.
You'll be fine.
Oh, I just killed young wife. Oh shit, I have one fucking health. God damn.
Damn it.
Check this. I have your back. This will only work for a minute.
60 seconds remaining.
Please heal.
I see. Right.
Fuck, I was about to ult you, Grim.
No power down. Get in there.
He just keeps pressing him.
I have your back.
She keeps pressing that single.
I'm dead.
Fuck.
Overtime.
I'm dead.
Again?
And GG.
Oh.
Defeats. Defeat.
Play of the game.
What?
When the fuck were you playing Doomfist?
You know, he plays unconventional characters that aren't suited for the maps. Actually, no, Doomfist, he was actually doing good.
How was that?
Wow.
That was I did much better stuff as other characters. Okay. Because maybe they both had ults. I don't know.
All right, that's it for me.
Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, I guess it's time to throw in the towel.
Okay, bye. Oh, Jesus.
Wait, I'll finish up with great stuff.
I have gold everything.
Nice. Even damage?
Yeah, everything.
Even healing?
Not healing, but...
No, then do the opposites and everything. Got Jamal fucking punching him out.
He fucking decredit me?
Yeah, fight. Kiss. Okay, bye. Okay, I'm going to fucking watch videos and go to bed 'cause I'm fucking tired.
Yeah.
You have a good night.
Goodbye.
It was fun.
Say goodbye to the stroker. It is just me now. Let's go. Final loot crate. We got this from fucking having Twitch Prime. Whee! And it's a blue. All duplicates. Guess I'll take a look to see what other shit I can buy. Pretty sure I got all the event skins except for this adventure one. Oh wait, no, okay, I got it. Okay. That settles that then. Yeah, I guess that's it. Good night, anybody that's watching. Thank you for watching.